Okay, so imagine this. Voters heading to polling stations, but they're walking past buildings, scarred by recent conflict.
Yeah.
That was the scene in South Lebanon on Saturday, May 24th, 2025. They were holding municipal elections there.
And for this deep dive, we're drawing insights straight from an Al Jazeera article that covered that specific vote.
Right.
Our goal here is really to unpack what these elections signify, especially as a kind of litmus test for Hezbollah's support.
Yeah.
And we want to pull out the key takeaways from the article about, well, what's actually happening on the ground.
Makes sense. So paint the picture for us a bit more. We're talking about elections in a predominantly Shia region. Yeah. An area known for strong ties to Hezbollah and Amal.
Exactly.
And it's all happening after this ceasefire with Israel, which hasn't exactly stopped all the sporadic fighting, from what I understand.
That's right. It was actually the final phase of Lebanon's, staggered local elections. This specific round was for the southern districts held on that Saturday.
And the source, Al Jazeera, seems pretty clear about who the main players are down there.
Oh, absolutely. It's Hezbollah and Amal. They're allied, and honestly, the expectation was that they'd dominate these councils. Often, they were running unopposed in quite a few places.
Okay, so if they're that dominant, why frame it as this big test? What exactly, according to the article, was being tested for Hezbollah?
Well, that's one of the key points the article makes. Even with that dominance, this election was seen as really important for Hezbollah to show, publicly demonstrate that they still hold major political influence there.
Ah, so it's about reaffirming that support visibly.
Precisely, making it clear.
And you really can't discuss this election without acknowledging the backdrop. I mean, months of attacks. Then that ceasefire agreed in November 2024.
Yes, and the Al Jazeera piece highlights something really important. Even with that November ceasefire, sporadic Israeli strikes kept happening.
Kept happening, even right before the vote.
Yeah, they reported air raids hitting several spots in the south just days before polling day. So you have a truce, technically, but the region's still very much reeling from last year's war between Hezbollah and Israel. And Hezbollah-linked targets are, well, still being targeted.
That constant tension must add such a layer to everything. How did Hezbollah actually come out of that recent conflict, the war leading up to the ceasefire? What does the article suggest?
So the article, based on its assessment, suggests Hezbollah emerged from the conflict with somewhat reduced military capabilities.
Okay.
And it implies their political leverage might also be, well, maybe diminished compared to before the war started.
Which, like you said earlier, makes this election even more critical for them, right? It's almost like saying, look, things might be tough militarily, but politically, our base is solid.
Exactly that. They're sort of using these elections as a platform to underscore that political strength, to show influence, even if, as the reporter noted, their military capacity took a hit.
What really jumped out at me from the reporting was the description of voter turnout. And frankly, this underlying feeling of resilience, despite everything.
It really does stand out. The article talks about high turnout being reported, especially in those border villages, places that saw, really heavy damage during the conflict last year.
Like where specifically?
Well, think about residents from Kfar Kila. The article describes it as being almost flattened by Israeli attacks. They had to travel to nearby Nabati just to cast their vote.
Wow.
And others from areas around there were voting entire. So people were displaced but still making the effort.
That image, people displaced but determined to vote. Quite powerful. And then there was that symbolic detail about President Joseph Aoun.
Oh, yeah. He voted in his hometown, Aichir, for the first time in 40 years. 40 years.
Wow.
And the article quotes him saying, the will of life is stronger than death, and the will of construction is stronger than destruction. Kind of captures that resilience you were talking about.
Yeah, it really does. The article also includes some voices directly from the ground. Who else was voting? What kind of things were they saying?
Well, it mentions that among the voters were actually Hezbollah members still recovering from those terrible pager explosions back in September 2024.
Oh, right. That attack killed over a dozen people, wounded thousands.
Nearly 3,000, yeah. So some of those people still recovering were at the polls.
Puts a very human cost on everything we're discussing. And there was a quote from a Hezbollah legislator, too.
Yes, Ali Fayyad. He represents border villages. He was quoted in Nabatia saying that the Southerners are proving again that they are with the choice of resistance.
Okay, but the picture the Al Jazeera reporter describes, it isn't just simple support and resilience, is it? This is where it gets quite nuanced, the complex feelings.
It really is. The reporter points out something crucial. Alongside that public display of support, many residents apparently also felt that Hezbollah hadn't, protected them enough during the war.
So there's this kind of tension between the political loyalty and maybe a personal sense of vulnerability.
Exactly. A deep sense of vulnerability and also a fear of being isolated. That's what the reporter picked up on.
Isolated not just from Israel, but
Also within Lebanon itself, feeling marginalized maybe by people in other parts of the country who oppose Hezbollah, that fear was there too.
that really connects this local vote to the much bigger national picture in Lebanon, the challenges the whole country is facing.
Absolutely. And the article touches on that the new government in Lebanon pledging to create a state monopoly on weapons.
Which directly impacts Hezbollah.
Right. It increases the pressure on them to disarm, which, interestingly, is actually part of the U.S. brokered truce agreement with Israel.
And besides the politics, there's just the enormous practical challenge of rebuilding after all that fighting.
Oh, it's huge. Lebanon faces this massive reconstruction task after, 14 months of war? The World Bank estimate, cited in the article, is over $11 billion needed, just for rebuilding.
11 billion. Wow.
And just to recap the conflict's origin quickly, the article mentions it started back in October 2023. Hezbollah launched rockets supporting Palestinians in Gaza, Israel hit back, and it spiraled into that full war, ending with a ceasefire last November.
Yeah. So if we bring this back for you, the listener, what the Alazer article really lays out is this fascinating tension playing out in South Lebanon right now.
On one side, you've got this election. It's a clear political statement supporting Hezbollah, even when their military side might be weakened and the conflict isn't totally over.
Right. But then on the other side, you hear about these very real feelings of vulnerability from the people who lived through the war, the immense personal cost and these just staggering reconstruction needs. It's like a community trying to balance its political allegiances while literally living amidst the ruins and the fear left by war. So summing up this deep dive, the South Lebanon elections show Hezbollah demonstrating political resilience despite the war's costs. But underneath, there are these complex feelings among residents, vulnerability mixed with solidarity, all happening against a backdrop of huge national challenges like disarmament pressure and, well, rebuilding everything.
Yeah, that covers it well. And just based purely on what this Al Jazeera article presents, here's maybe a final thought for you to chew on. When people vote in a place so heavily damaged while still feeling vulnerable and facing this monumental task of rebuilding, what does that act tell us about how concepts like resistance and the will to life are actually understood and maybe lived differently in South Lebanon at this moment?